What if the ultimate weapon of war was also its most vulnerable, a deadly paradox in the skies? On January 31st, 1945, at Clark Air Base in Luzon, Philippines, Major Frank T. McCoy's hands trembled as he documented an astonishing discovery. An intact Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, tail number 763-12. This wasn't a mangled wreck, but a complete operational aircraft, abandoned by its crew during the American advance. Its cylindrical fuselage, the flying cigar to Allied forces, gleamed under the tropical sun, stretching nearly 20 meters from nose to tail, with a 25-meter wingspan untouched by battle. The 1,500 horsepower radial engines were pristine. Yet what McCoy, commander of the Technical Air Intelligence Unit, found inside would send shockwaves through American understanding of Japanese aviation. The fuel tanks were utterly exposed. No self-sealing rubber, no armor plating, no fire suppression, just thin aluminum, barely 2 millimeters thick, separating thousands of liters of highly volatile fuel from enemy fire. This revelation uncovered a design philosophy so alien to Western military thinking that its implications would take months to fully grasp, ultimately reshaping American tactical doctrine and aircraft design for the remainder of the war. Every assumption American pilots held about Japanese capabilities, the price Japanese engineers were willing to pay for performance, and the value Imperial forces placed on crew survival was about to be systematically dismantled by this single, pristine bomber. The path to this shocking discovery began 4 years earlier, on December 8, 1941. As smoke still smoldered from Pearl Harbor, 82 G4M Betty bombers and 26 G3M Nell bombers launched from Formosa, targeting Clark Field itself. Achieving complete tactical surprise, the Japanese formation arrived at 12:35 p.m., flying at an unassailable 20,000 feet. The initial wave unleashed 636 bombs across the runways, followed by Zero fighters sweeping in at treetop level, annihilating any aircraft that survived. Of 17 B-17 flying fortresses, 12 were incinerated. Nearly every P-40 Warhawk fighter became burning wreckage. In just 45 minutes, American air power in the Philippines was effectively wiped out. Lieutenant James Harrington, a rare survivor, watched from a bomb shelter as the formation retreated. What struck me was how they came in, he later recounted. Perfect formation, high altitude, totally beyond our reach. The Betty bombers had departed untouched, demonstrating exceptional range, striking from 460 miles away, a feat no American bomber could match. The Betty's first year of combat proved devastatingly effective. Just 2 days after Clark Field, on December 10, 1941, 26 G4M bombers, alongside older G3M Nells, attacked Force Z, a British naval task force including HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse. The assault began at 12:20 p.m., with Japanese bombers executing coordinated, precise torpedo runs that astonished British observers. Carrying Type 91 aerial torpedoes, each with an 840-kilogram weight and 205-kilogram warhead, designed for shallow water, the Bettys focused on the 2 capital ships with devastating accuracy. The Prince of Wales, a 43,000-ton battleship, suffered at least 6 torpedo hits and damage from level bombers, leading to catastrophic flooding and a severe list. The Repulse, a World War I-era battlecruiser, absorbed at least 4 torpedo hits, despite fierce anti-aircraft fire. Both capital ships capsized and sank within hours. The Prince of Wales at 1:20 p.m., The Repulse at 1:33 p.m., claiming 841 British sailors. In less than 2 hours, air power had achieved what naval theorists debated for decades, sinking actively, defending capital ships in the open sea. British naval superiority in Asian waters was shattered. Throughout early 1942, American and Allied pilots consistently encountered Betty bombers, operating with impunity at ranges that defied conventional understanding. They struck Darwin, Australia, from 1,500 miles away, attacked Port Moresby across New Guinea's mountain ranges, and hit Guadalcanal from Rabaul, over 600 miles distant. This extraordinary range provided Japanese forces with strategic flexibility, allowing them to attack at will from distant bases beyond Allied striking range, an advantage that persisted through the first 6 months of the war. Betty bombers participated in nearly every Japanese offensive, becoming a symbol of their air power's reach. However, this dominance hinged on limited Allied fighter opposition. By mid-1942, as American fighter strength grew, with Wildcat pilots giving way to more capable Hellcats and Corsairs, and as training and tactics improved, Betty crews began reporting alarming losses. The stark shift became undeniable on August 8, 1942. Of 23 G4M bombers from the 4th Air Group attacking Guadalcanal, American fighters intercepted and shot down 18 over Savo Island, resulting in approximately 120 aviator deaths, the single worst G4M loss of the campaign. Fighter pilots consistently observed the same terrifying phenomenon. The Betty exploded into flames with minimal hits. 2 or 3 rounds anywhere along the fuselage or wings produced catastrophic results, earning it grim nicknames like Flying Cigar, One-Shot Lighter, and Flying Zippo. By October 1942, Lieutenant Commander John Thomas Blackburn, commanding VF-17, flying F-4U Corsairs at Guadalcanal, witnessed the Betty's transformed reputation. "First time we caught a Betty formation, we couldn't believe how easy they went down," he reported. "Hit them anywhere along the fuselage or wings and they'd explode." The true extent of this vulnerability, however, remained a mystery until intact examples could be thoroughly examined. The first significant intelligence breakthrough occurred in November 1942, when Australian forces overran Japanese airfields at Buna, Papua New Guinea. Technical air intelligence units found Betty bombers with various levels of damage, confirming pilot reports. The fuel tanks had no protection. Aeronautical engineers with the Allied Technical Air Intelligence Unit, Southwest Pacific, conducted detailed analyses, revealing fuel cells with thin aluminum construction, no rubber sealant, no protective coating, and no fire suppression systems. This wasn't battle damage. It was standard Japanese design. The implications were staggering. By 1942, American bombers universally featured self-sealing fuel tanks, using layered rubber that swelled upon contact with fuel, sealing punctures. This technology added significant weight but dramatically improved crew survival, a non-negotiable weight penalty for American doctrine. Yet Japan's primary bomber, produced in thousands, operated with completely unprotected fuel tanks. The weight saved was evident, but the cost in crew lives became increasingly obvious in mounting loss statistics. The captured Betty at Clark Field in January 1945 provided the most complete technical analysis. Major McCoy and his team spent 3 weeks meticulously dismantling and documenting every system. Their secret report, distributed to Allied air forces, detailed specifications that explained both the Betty's extraordinary capabilities and its catastrophic vulnerabilities. The G4M Model 1 was ruthlessly optimized for range and speed, with an empty weight of 6,741 kilograms, remarkably light for its size. It boasted a maximum range of 6,034 kilometers, exceeding 3,700 miles, making it the longest-ranged bomber in the world at the time. Its 4,780 liters of fuel were distributed across 8 unprotected tanks in the wing's center section, directly vulnerable to combat damage. American engineers calculated that eliminating protection systems saved over 500 kilograms per aircraft, translating directly into additional fuel capacity and extended range. But this weight saving created a critical failure point. Any hit to the wings guaranteed catastrophic loss. These design choices originated in September 1937, when the Japanese Navy demanded a bomber capable of a 398 kilometers per hour top speed, a cruising altitude of 3,000 meters, and a range of 4,722 kilometers unloaded, or 3,700 kilometers, with an 800-kilogram bomb load. These requirements reflected Japan's vast Pacific Empire, needing bombers to strike enemy positions far beyond carrier aircraft range. No bomber in the world in 1937 could meet these demands. The man tasked with this impossible feat was Kiro Honjo, who led Mitsubishi's design team. Honjo, having studied bomber design at Junkers in Germany, understood that such requirements necessitated compromises Western air forces would never accept. Honjo's team meticulously analyzed every component, seeking to reduce weight without compromising structural integrity. They discovered that achieving the required range demanded massive fuel capacity, while achieving the required speed with that fuel load demanded minimal empty weight. Protection systems, armor plating, self-sealing tanks, fire suppression, all added substantial weight. The cumulative weight of adequate protection would prevent meeting performance goals. Honjo made the defining decision. Protection would be sacrificed for performance. Unprotected aluminum fuel tanks, no self-sealing compounds, no armor, minimal fire extinguishers. Every saved kilogram would be invested in fuel, range, and speed. He understood the risks, calculating the vulnerabilities, but with available technology, the Navy's demands could not be met otherwise. Honjo delivered performance. The first G4M prototype flew on October 23, 1939, exceeding all expectations for speed, range, and payload. It entered production as the Navy Type 1 attack bomber, reaching operational units by April 1941. By December 1941, approximately 180 G4Ms were in service, forming the backbone of Japanese land-based air power. The Betty's combat debut against Clark Field and Force Z initially validated Honjo's priorities under the specific conditions of early 1942. Devastatingly effective when facing limited opposition and operating beyond enemy fighter range. However, these advantages vanished the moment American fighter strength increased and interception became routine. The Guadalcanal campaign exposed the Betty's fundamental flaw. From August to October 1942, over 100 G4M bombers were lost with their crews in a sustained bloodletting Japanese air forces could not sustain. The August 8th mission alone annihilated 18 of 23 aircraft. The pattern repeated. Betty formations flew from Rabaul to Guadalcanal, engaged American fighters, and suffered catastrophic losses. By the campaign's end, Betty losses exceeded 100 aircraft, with crew casualties nearing 700 men. Japan's most capable land-based bomber was rendered obsolete by its own vulnerabilities, transformed from a feared weapon into easy meat. By mid-1943, Japanese engineers recognized the need for modifications. Rubber sheets were installed beneath wing fuel tanks, a compromise that added minimal weight but offered limited protection against leakage. This reduced top speed and range, but failed to significantly improve crew survival, as the rubber could not prevent fires from larger caliber rounds or explosions from ignited fuel vapor. A more comprehensive attempt, the G4M Model 3, introduced in October 1944, featured actual self-sealing fuel tanks, reducing fuel capacity and range significantly. Only about 60 were produced by war's end, too few and too late to alter the Betty's combat record. By late 1944, American air superiority was so complete that no level of protection could save the Betty. The Betty's vulnerability became so notorious that American forces used it to their advantage. On April 18, 1943, a Betty bomber became the instrument of Admiral Yamamoto's death. American codebreakers intercepted communications detailing Yamamoto's flight from Rabaul to Bougainville. 18 P-38 Lightnings from the 339th Fighter Squadron were dispatched on a mission requiring extraordinary precision. A 400-mile, wave-top height flight, strict radio silence, and perfect navigation. They intercepted Yamamoto's formation, 2 Betty bombers with 6-0 escorts, at 9:34, exactly on schedule. Captain Thomas Lanphier and First Lieutenant Rex Barber engaged the bombers. Barber hit Yamamoto's lead Betty in the wing, where the unprotected fuel tanks were. The aircraft exploded in flames, crashing into the jungle, killing Yamamoto. This operation highlighted Allied intelligence and planning superiority, and the Betty's fatal weaknesses. Once intercepted, survival was impossible. The Betty's vulnerability reached its most dramatic demonstration on March 21, 1945. 18 G4M bombers took off from Koya Air Base, each carrying an MXY-7 Ohka rocket bomb, a piloted, rocket-powered kamikaze aircraft with a 1,200-kilogram warhead. The mission demanded the Bettys fly within 20 kilometers of their targets before releasing the Ohka. However, the additional weight and drag of the Ohka made the bombers even more vulnerable. American radar detected the formation, and F-6F Hellcats from USS Hornet intercepted them well before release range. The Betty formations, already compromised, proved utterly helpless. One by one, they exploded and fell into the ocean. Not a single Betty survived. Not a single Ohka was launched. 137 bomber crew members and 15 Ohka pilots died. This mission epitomized the Betty's fundamental flaw. An aircraft designed for distant strikes could not survive to deliver its weapons against prepared opposition. The final mission flown by Betty bombers occurred on August 19, 1945, 4 days after Japan's surrender. 2 white-painted G4M bombers with green crosses departed Atsugi Airfield, carrying Japanese representatives to discuss surrender terms. These aircraft, call signs Baton 1 and Baton 2, a poignant reference to the site of American surrender in April 1942, flew to Ishima, where the delegation transferred to an American C-54. Lieutenant Densudo piloted one of these G6M transport variants, stripped of weapons and carrying only passengers. American fighters escorted the White Bettys, ensuring safe passage while preventing deviation. The bombers that had opened the Pacific War by devastating Clark Field now symbolized Japan's defeat, bringing the conflict full circle. Betty production reached approximately 2,000 414 aircraft across all variants. The Model 1, around 1,172 produced, featured the original unprotected fuel tanks, making it the longest-ranged bomber but catastrophically vulnerable. The Model 2, around 1,142 produced, increased fuel capacity and speed but retained the same vulnerability. The Model 3, 60 to 91 produced, with self-sealing tanks, came too late and in too limited numbers to impact the war. Transport variants added another 30 aircraft. Mitsubishi factories peaked at 100 Bettys per month in 1943, but production declined as Allied bombing intensified. While production numbers underscore the Betty's importance, loss rates tell the true story. Few Bettys survived to war's end. Most were destroyed in combat, consumed by inevitable fires. By August 1945, only a handful remained operational. Thousands of Japanese aircrews died in Betty bombers, their deaths almost inevitable due to the aircraft's fundamental vulnerabilities. As former Flight Petty Officer Masahiro Sato recounted, "The Betty was a magnificent aircraft that asked us to die for its range. We flew it because we were ordered to fly it. We died in it because that was what it was designed to make us do." In stark contrast, Allied bombers like the B-17 Flying Fortress and B-25 Mitchell featured comprehensive protection, armor plating for crew, armored glass, and self-sealing fuel tanks. This added substantial weight, around 2,000 kilograms more for a B-25 than a Betty, but dramatically improved crew survival. American doctrine considered trained crews more valuable than easily replaceable aircraft. American factories, with their vast industrial capacity, produced over 12,000 B-17 and nearly 10,000 B-24s, allowing them to field large numbers of protected bombers without compromising capability. Japanese doctrine, however, reached different conclusions, prioritizing range and striking power over crew survival. This philosophy assumed surprise, limited enemy opposition, and a short, decisive war. All these assumptions proved catastrophically wrong. By mid-1942, American fighter strength made Betty interception routine. By late 1942, American pilots expertly exploited its vulnerabilities. By 1943, Betty missions became suicide operations, and by 1944, they could barely operate in daylight. The mathematics of the Betty's war were written in fire and loss. Range, speed, and payload meant nothing when bombers exploded before reaching targets or releasing weapons. The examination of tail number 763-12 at Clark Field in January 1945 revealed the complete story. The unprotected fuel tanks were not an oversight, but a deliberate choice by engineers who believed range mattered more than survival. Japanese designers had created precisely what their specifications demanded: an aircraft with extraordinary range and speed, built with minimal weight. This decision made sense within the constraints of 1937 technology and assumptions, but those assumptions crumbled under the reality of sustained combat against an industrially superior opponent. The Betty became a symbol of Japan's willingness to accept catastrophic casualties, a military culture valuing mission accomplishment over crew survival. The Betty bomber served from the first day of the Pacific War to the last, sinking capital ships and devastating air bases. It ranged across distances no other bomber could match, but its ultimate legacy is etched in loss statistics, exceeding all projections. The aircraft that opened the war by destroying American air power ended it carrying Japan's surrender delegation. The Betty's story is a profound lesson in the price of capability without protection. Performance alone cannot guarantee success when purchased at the cost of crew survival. Its extraordinary range meant nothing when aircraft couldn't survive the final kilometers to target. Its impressive speed offered no advantage against distant fighter intercepts. Its payload became irrelevant when formations were destroyed pre-release. Most importantly, the Betty reveals that military technology divorced from a realistic assessment of combat conditions produces weapons that kill their own crews as efficiently as they strike enemies. Japanese designers understood the risks in 1937 to 38, calculating vulnerabilities and accepting trade-offs, believing performance advantages would be decisive. They were wrong, and thousands of men paid the ultimate price for that miscalculation. The Betty's legacy delves into fundamental questions of design philosophy, military ethics, acceptable risk, and the value of human life in warfare. American designers prioritized protection. Japanese designers prioritized capability. In the end, the nation that valued crew survival built an air force capable of sustained operations. The nation that accepted catastrophic casualties built an air force that destroyed itself through attrition. The examination of tail number 763-12 at Clark Field provided the final undeniable proof. The Betty bomber was brilliantly designed to achieve specific goals, but those goals simply did not include bringing Japanese crews home alive. And in that single fact lies the entire story of why Japan lost the Pacific War.